There are moments in every human life when the mask begins to crack. For months, perhaps years, your person carried a secret conversation within their own soul, one they were unwilling to speak aloud. They hid it beneath smiles, distractions, explanations, and carefully constructed stories. Yet, according to Carl Jung, what we refuse to acknowledge does not disappear. It descends into the unconscious, where it quietly shapes our thoughts, emotions, and destiny. And then, last night, something changed. In the company of trusted friends, the walls of the ego weakened. The burden of silence became heavier than the fear of truth. And for the first time, they opened their heart and said, "I'm finally ready to admit this." But what compelled this confession? Was it merely a conversation among friends? Or was it something far deeper, a message emerging from the unconscious, demanding recognition? Jung believed that every hidden truth seeks expression, and every denied feeling longs to become conscious. What your person revealed last night may not simply be a confession. It may be the beginning of a profound psychological transformation. Tonight we will explore the hidden meaning behind their words, the unconscious forces that led them to this moment, and what this revelation could mean for your connection moving forward. The persona is one of Carl Jung's most important psychological concepts. It is the social mask an individual creates to navigate the world, gain acceptance, and protect the more vulnerable aspects of the psyche. From childhood onward, people learn which parts of themselves are welcomed and rewarded, and which parts are judged, criticized, or rejected. Over time, they construct an identity that fits the expectations of family, friends, culture, and society. This mask is not necessarily false. It serves a practical purpose. It helps individuals function in relationships, careers, and social environments. Yet problems arise when a person becomes so identified with the persona that they lose contact with their deeper feelings, desires, fears, and truths. Beneath the polished image presented to others lies a vast inner world filled with emotions and experiences that do not fit the chosen identity. These hidden elements do not vanish simply because they are ignored. They continue to exist in the unconscious, influencing behavior, dreams, moods, and relationships in subtle ways. A person may insist they are happy while carrying profound sadness. They may appear confident while secretly feeling inadequate. They may present themselves as independent while longing deeply for connection and understanding. The greater the distance between the persona and the authentic self, the greater the psychological tension that develops beneath the surface. Maintaining the persona requires constant energy. Individuals must continually defend the image they have created, even when it no longer reflects their inner reality. They monitor their words, suppress uncomfortable emotions, and avoid situations that might expose their hidden struggles. This effort can become exhausting. The psyche naturally seeks balance, and eventually the pressure generated by unexpressed truths begins to demand release. What was once hidden starts finding pathways into consciousness. It may emerge through emotional outbursts, unexpected confessions, anxiety, depression, recurring dreams, or a growing sense that one is living a life disconnected from genuine feelings. Relationships often become the stage upon which this tension plays out. Close friendships and trusted social circles create environments where the persona becomes more difficult to maintain. When people feel emotionally safe, the need for constant self-protection weakens. The carefully constructed mask begins to loosen. Thoughts that were once kept private move closer to the surface. Feelings that have been denied for months or years seek acknowledgement. The individual may find themselves speaking more honestly than they intended, revealing concerns, desires, regrets, or realizations that have long remained hidden. This process is rarely comfortable. The cracking of the persona can produce fear because it threatens the identity a person has relied upon for security and acceptance. Admitting a hidden truth means risking judgment, misunderstanding, or rejection. Yet it also creates the possibility of greater authenticity. The individual begins to confront aspects of themselves that have been excluded from conscious awareness. What initially feels like vulnerability may actually represent an important psychological development. Rather than maintaining an increasingly fragile mask, the person starts moving toward a more integrated sense of self, where external identity and inner reality become less divided. Carl Jung believed that much of human life is directed by forces that exist outside conscious awareness. Beneath everyday thoughts and decisions lies the unconscious, a vast psychological realm containing forgotten memories, suppressed emotions, unrealized desires, hidden fears, and aspects of the personality that have never been fully acknowledged. While the conscious mind often believes it is in control, the unconscious continuously influences perception, behavior, relationships, and emotional reactions. It speaks through symbols, dreams, intuitions, projections, and moments when emotions emerge with unexpected intensity. The unconscious does not remain silent indefinitely. Whatever is denied, ignored, or pushed away seeks expression in one form or another. Jung observed that psychological energy cannot simply disappear. When an individual refuses to confront certain truths about themselves, those truths descend into the unconscious, where they continue to exert influence. A person may consciously deny a feeling while unconsciously acting in ways that reveal its presence. They may insist they have moved on from a painful experience, while recurring emotional patterns suggest otherwise. The unconscious persistently attempts to bring hidden material into awareness, because psychological growth depends upon recognition rather than avoidance. This process often unfolds gradually. Small signs begin to appear long before a person openly acknowledges what is taking place within them. They may become increasingly reflective, emotionally sensitive, or preoccupied with certain thoughts. Dreams may become more vivid and meaningful. Certain conversations may provoke stronger reactions than expected. Situations that once seemed insignificant may suddenly carry emotional weight. These experiences are often indications that unconscious material is approaching the threshold of consciousness. Human relationships frequently serve as catalysts for this emergence. Other people can mirror aspects of ourselves that we have not fully recognized. Through attraction, conflict, admiration, disappointment, or emotional attachment, hidden parts of the psyche become activated. A person may discover feelings they did not know they possessed, or confront fears they have spent years avoiding. Relationships have a unique ability to expose the gap between who individuals believe themselves to be and what they actually experience deep within. As unconscious material rises toward awareness, inner tension often increases. The conscious mind may resist what is emerging because it threatens established beliefs, identities, or emotional defenses. Yet resistance rarely eliminates the underlying reality. Instead, the pressure continues to build until expression becomes increasingly difficult to avoid. What was once hidden begins demanding recognition. Thoughts become clearer, emotions become stronger, insights that were previously vague suddenly feel undeniable. Moments of confession or emotional honesty often represent the culmination of this process. What appears on the surface as a spontaneous admission is frequently the result of a long internal struggle between concealment and acknowledgement. The unconscious has been working beneath awareness, gradually moving a truth closer to consciousness until it can no longer remain unspoken. The individual may experience this as a profound sense of relief, as though a burden has been lifted. In reality, they are witnessing a psychological movement that Jung regarded as essential to personal development. The transition of hidden inner realities into conscious awareness, where they can finally be understood, integrated, and transformed. A confession is often viewed as a simple act of communication, a moment when a person finally speaks a truth they have been keeping to themselves. Yet, from a Jungian perspective, a confession carries a far deeper psychological significance. It is not merely the sharing of information, It is the visible expression of an inner transformation that has been unfolding beneath the surface for a long time. Long before words are spoken, the psyche has been wrestling with tensions, contradictions, fears, and desires that seek acknowledgement. The confession becomes the moment when an internal struggle breaks into conscious reality. Many individuals spend significant portions of their lives avoiding certain truths about themselves. They may suppress emotions that feel dangerous, deny desires that conflict with their self-image, or hide realizations that challenge the identity they have carefully constructed. The conscious mind often believes that silence can maintain stability. If a truth remains unspoken, it may appear easier to manage. Yet Jung argued that what is rejected by consciousness does not disappear. Instead, it gathers strength in the unconscious, influencing behavior and emotional life from behind the scenes. As this hidden material accumulates, psychological pressure begins to increase. A person may experience restlessness, confusion, anxiety, or a persistent sense that something within them is unresolved. They may find themselves repeatedly returning to the same thoughts, memories, or emotional concerns. Even when they attempt to distract themselves, the underlying issue continues to seek attention. This growing tension reflects a conflict between the conscious identity and the deeper truths emerging from the unconscious. The moment of confession often arrives when maintaining silence becomes more painful than speaking openly. The individual reaches a psychological threshold where concealment can no longer sustain itself. What has been hidden demands recognition. This does not necessarily occur because the person suddenly becomes fearless. In many cases, fear remains present. They may worry about judgment, rejection, misunderstanding, or the consequences of honesty. Yet another force has become stronger: the need for authenticity. Trusted friends frequently play an important role during this stage. In a supportive environment, emotional defenses begin to relax. The person feels less compelled to maintain a carefully controlled image. As feelings of safety increase, unconscious material finds a pathway into conscious expression. Words that have been rehearsed internally for months or years finally emerge. The confession may seem spontaneous to those listening, but psychologically, it is often the result of a long developmental process. Jung regarded such moments as significant turning points because they represent movement toward greater self-awareness. The individual is no longer merely carrying a hidden truth, they are actively confronting it. By bringing it into language, they begin transforming it from an unconscious burden into a conscious reality that can be examined and understood. What was once fragmented and isolated within the psyche becomes part of a larger process of integration. The act of admitting a truth changes the relationship a person has with themselves. The energy previously spent on denial, concealment, and internal conflict becomes available for reflection and growth. New possibilities emerge because the individual is no longer trapped between what they know inwardly and what they present outwardly. The confession marks a psychological crossing point, where hidden realities begin entering conscious life, and the journey toward deeper authenticity gains momentum. Among Carl Jung's most influential ideas is the concept of the shadow, the hidden dimension of the personality that contains qualities, emotions, desires, impulses, and truths that an individual has rejected or refused to acknowledge. The shadow is not inherently negative or evil. Rather, it consists of everything that has been pushed outside conscious awareness because it conflicts with the image a person wishes to maintain. While people often associate the shadow with anger, jealousy, fear, or insecurity, it can also contain positive qualities such as creativity, passion, courage, vulnerability, and authentic desires that have been suppressed over time. The formation of the shadow begins early in life. As individuals grow, they learn which behaviors and emotions are accepted by their family, culture, and social environment. Certain aspects of the personality receive approval, while others are criticized, ignored, or discouraged. To gain acceptance and avoid rejection, people gradually hide parts of themselves that seem undesirable or unacceptable. These rejected elements do not disappear. Instead, they sink into the unconscious, where they become part of the shadow. Although hidden from conscious awareness, the shadow remains active. It influences emotions, relationships, decisions, and perceptions in ways that are often difficult to recognize. One of the shadow's most common expressions occurs through projection. Individuals frequently attribute their own unconscious qualities to other people. Traits they dislike, fear, admire, or deny within themselves are perceived more easily in others. This is why certain individuals provoke unusually strong emotional reactions. What appears to be a reaction to another person may actually reflect an encounter with an unrecognized aspect of one's own psyche. As life progresses, the shadow continually seeks recognition. Jung believed that psychological health requires individuals to become aware of these hidden dimensions rather than pretending they do not exist. The shadow's emergence can occur through dreams, emotional conflicts, unexpected behaviors, recurring patterns, or moments of profound self-reflection. Sometimes it appears gradually, but in other situations, it surfaces with surprising force, confronting the individual with truths they have spent years avoiding. When a person begins to admit something deeply personal, they are often experiencing an encounter with the shadow. Feelings that were once denied become impossible to ignore. Hidden desires demand acknowledgement. Emotional realities that have remained buried begin moving into consciousness. This process can be deeply unsettling because it challenges the familiar image the individual has built around themselves. They may discover contradictions between who they believed they were and what they actually feel. Such realizations can create discomfort, confusion, and vulnerability. Yet Jung considered this confrontation essential for psychological growth. Avoiding the shadow may preserve temporary comfort, but it also limits self-understanding and personal development. Bringing shadow elements into awareness allows individuals to become more complete. Rather than dividing the psyche into acceptable and unacceptable parts, they begin recognizing the complexity of their true nature. The emergence of the shadow often feels like a moment of revelation. Hidden emotions become visible. Long-suppressed truths acquire language. Internal conflicts that once operated in darkness enter conscious awareness. What was previously concealed gains an opportunity to be understood, accepted, and integrated into a broader and more authentic sense of self, reducing the division between the outer personality and the deeper realities of the inner world. Carl Jung viewed psychological growth not as the perfection of the personality, but as a gradual movement toward wholeness. This process, which he called individuation, involves bringing unconscious aspects of the self into conscious awareness and integrating them into a more complete identity. Many people spend years living according to expectations imposed by family, society, relationships, or their own carefully constructed self-image. While this may provide a sense of stability, it often creates a separation between who a person appears to be and who they truly are beneath the surface. Authentic transformation begins when that separation becomes impossible to ignore. The path toward transformation rarely starts with certainty. More often, it begins with discomfort. A person may feel that something in their life no longer fits, even if they cannot fully explain why. They may experience emotional restlessness, recurring thoughts, dissatisfaction, or a growing awareness that they have been avoiding important truths. What once seemed manageable begins demanding attention. The familiar structures that supported their identity start to feel restrictive, creating tension between the life they are living and the deeper reality emerging from within. This inner conflict serves an important psychological purpose. Jung believed that transformation requires the dissolution of outdated patterns before new forms of understanding can emerge. The individual is forced to confront aspects of themselves that have remained hidden, denied, or underdeveloped. These encounters often challenge long-held assumptions about identity, relationships, values, and desires. The process can feel unsettling because it requires letting go of certainty and entering unfamiliar psychological territory. Moments of honesty frequently mark the beginning of this transition. When a person finally acknowledges a truth they have been carrying in silence, something fundamental changes. The confession itself may involve feelings, fears, regrets, desires, or realizations that have remained hidden for a long time. By speaking these truths aloud, the individual weakens the power of denial and begins establishing a more direct relationship with their authentic self. What was once buried in the unconscious becomes available for conscious reflection and understanding. Authentic transformation does not occur instantly after such revelations. Instead, the admission creates an opening through which further growth becomes possible. The person must now examine the meaning of what has emerged. They may reevaluate past decisions, question existing relationships, or reconsider the beliefs that have shaped their behavior. This stage often requires courage because awareness alone is not enough. Transformation demands a willingness to act in accordance with newly discovered truths. As this process continues, the individual gradually becomes less dependent on external validation and more connected to their inner reality. They no longer need to invest as much energy in maintaining appearances or protecting a false image. Emotional conflicts that once remained hidden can be addressed directly. Relationships may become more genuine because communication is rooted in honesty rather than self-protection. The person develops a stronger sense of psychological integrity, where thoughts, feelings, and actions become more aligned. Jung regarded this movement toward authenticity as one of the most meaningful developments in human life. It represents a shift from unconscious living to conscious participation in one's own psychological evolution. Hidden truths are no longer treated as threats to be avoided, but as essential parts of the self that contribute to a richer and more complete understanding of who one truly is. The emergence of this awareness signals the beginning of a deeper relationship with the psyche and a more genuine expression of the individual's unique nature.